I've got a question with regard to having multiple switches in your application. If you have two switches, one is dedicated just to your phones and the other is dedicated just to PCs within the network, should you still link those two switches together? I had an application like that, and what the IT company did was from the router made one connection to my switch, made another connection from the router to their switch. And I guess my concern is there really QoS going on when it's set up that way?
That's a really good question, especially if you're using SIP trunks. If you're using SIP trunks, you've got a really good question there because are you using analog trunks? Are you using PSTN analog trunks or POTS lens?
No, they're actually SIP trunks, and
good. Okay.
It's been working fine, you know.
Well, I would be concerned about it with SIP trunks, and the reason is because maybe their router has the ability to set quality of service, but it's got to set it at the CS3. It's got to be the DSCP, the protocol DSCP and layer 3, and it's got to be set for CS3 is the high priority. And if that's the case, then your SIP traffic is going to get higher priority than non-voice traffic. So your concern is appropriate. And I think it's correct that you'd be concerned there. If you've got good service and things are working well, you're probably okay. But if you have, if you experience jitter, or if you experience, at the very worst condition, dropped calls, what you're experiencing is loading of the bandwidth where UDP traffic is not getting priority. See, what happens is we've got a couple things online that help with this, but when you don't have TCP protocol was developed basically around non-voice traffic. That's where it came from. I mean, we've had Ethernet around now for what, 20, 25 years? It's been a long, long time. So nobody thought to put voice on it for many, many years, and the protocol was designed to utilize whatever bandwidth was available for whatever function called it. So if I had on simple terms, if I've got a YouTube video and I want to watch it in 1080p high definition, and I want to all download it right now, and I've got 100 megabits of bandwidth, TCP protocol says, okay, you got all of it. You got 100 meg. It's all yours. And what that does then is it doesn't allow for voice traffic to say, hey, wait a minute, I need a little slice of that. And believe me, when we're talking about voice traffic, we're talking about little tiny slices. I think that I have the bandwidth stuff coming up. Yeah. So it's very, very small, very tiny. 200K is a buffered, gives us even room for cushion. To say 200K is the requirement for each call is an over-assessment of what's required for a G711 codec. And to say that has any impact on the network is almost ludicrous. So it becomes really important that when the demand for voice traffic is there, is that there is bandwidth available. And that's what circumventing the switch to perform the QoS, that's the risk that you run.
Can I ask a question with regard to what you have on the screen right now? If switch 3 is connected to data switch 1, so in that scenario, data switch 1 would control QoS for data switch 3. Is that correct, the way that's set up right now? Okay. Yeah. If you were using uplink ports, would that still be the case?
It would, but it wouldn't be as hard and fast. Even with uplink ports, especially at, today usually your switches are going to be 1 gig minimum for update port, uplink ports. So you won't have bandwidth constraint problem between the two. But the key is that as long as it's going into a switch, let's say the uplink ports are on data switch 1. Data switch 1 should still have the ability to set QoS, even if it's an uplink port. It should have the ability to set QoS so that I can tell the packet coming in, you got priority in queue over this non-voice traffic. So, in a nutshell, the answer to your question is yes, it still matters. It matters less, but it still matters.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, Paul?
Yeah.
Hey, back to the access control list. You were talking about you add a rule, say into the SIP service, and then hit the load recommended defaults, and what that does evidently is it takes that address and populates it in the right places you need it to in the system. But it also wipes out your remote phone address in a sense. And I don't understand that, and I didn't understand that. I was talking with tech support, and they said, well, hit the load recommended defaults, which I did, and then then the thing was gone, and I didn't. And then I didn't understand.
Be a real Achilles heel. That load recommended default button at the top is really an initial installation button, and afterwards, I probably wouldn't press it. Let's just take that for example here. Let's take this all of the erroneous stuff. I'm not using that one right now. Not using that one right now. Not using that one. Not using that one. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to hit apply changes. It's going to save the information. Now I'm going to save myself some step by not having to go back and look again. When I go in here this time, I'm going to save this one, so I can just stick it in there again. But now I'm going to hit load recommended defaults. Notice that everything is really truncated down here. All I've got is that one IP address, and for all of the services. So load recommended defaults is, it's part of the sequence of installing the system. When you install your system, you're going to want to tell the system what the outside public IP is, and you do that under the SIP setup. You're also going to want to tell the system what internal IP address it's operating on. Those are fundamental pieces that are used to build other parts of the network application that you're building with their voice. If I program if I did my extensions now, and I started adding extensions, like the first class that we did, if I added extensions right now, it would identify it as being on this local network, and that's going to be the network that it gets to talk on. If I haven't put that information in, the extensions are going to get provisioned, they're going to come up, but they won't actually be able to talk to the server, because the server is going to say, no, I deny service from any of these devices. So when you're talking about these things, these become the first things that you do. And then when you're in access control, this load recommended defaults is like, to me, that's you do it once and then never do it again. And then when I want to add, add to it, okay, I've got this remote phone, and that remote phone is located at 72.64.129.45. Create the rule. Bam. Now I got that, and I got my IP address up there in the rule. Now my phone can communicate, and it's going to be able to, get a voice connection back and forth.
Right. Okay. You got time for one more slightly off center?
Okay.
Okay. I have a remote phone at my office connected to one of my customers, and from that phone I can call on the intercom and call them. However, in the folks that are running Call Manager over there, version 2, they have a DSS button or a BLF button on the Call Manager for my remote phone, but it's always gray. it's like, it's like the call manager does not.
It's never registered.
It's never. Yeah, it's kind of like it's not there. And
yeah, but it is. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I can call over there, and and when you're looking at the remote phone,
you have some kind of a router or a bandwidth problem. It's one of those two things.
Okay.
You're getting an interruption in the normal keep alive period that is interrupting it from staying as a registered phone. I mean, when you go into like the routing, the reporting page under monitoring, do you see it as, for instance, 621 is my remote phone, and I see it logged in, and I'm getting a good ping rate. Do you see that remote phone in monitoring? And is it green?
I don't think it is. I think I see the address, but it's grayed out. It's not green.
Yeah, you've got something. You might be able to adjust some of the timing on the phone, but I wouldn't go there because you're trying to patch a problem that exists. If you're going to change time, we have set the values of how often a phone is pinged and what kind of response rate we expect. We've set it really to be an optimum level, right? So you can adjust them, but in doing so, what you're doing is you're adjusting them for a condition that is not working well. So you're probably better to try to solve your problem rather than patch it with adjusting timers.
Okay. Well, yeah, I understand. Well, I may have, I'm not an IT guy, so what happens is you go to the IT guy and you say, hey, look, I don't know that you got all my ports forwarded that I needed, or, and they swear up and down that they do, and maybe you covered this already, but, do you have a suggestion as to, how do you go about, banging that router to find out whether the ports that you need are open,
They would have to actually give you access to the router, and if they won't do that, you've got a real problem. In fact,
okay, so
if you have something like that going on, one of the things that we've done is, and one of the things the reason that we did this was, let's just go to the Epitomy here, or the wiki.epitomy.com, and let me see, router bypass. We put this on here so that you could try something. This is your IT guys. They're not going to like this, okay? Because this allows a different path of access to your system or to the LAN. But what we're recommending here in a router bypass is that you utilize a secondary router as a gateway for the voice connection. Most people have 2 WAN IP addresses. Usually they sell them in blocks of 5, and they're just not that expensive anymore. So getting a second IP address is not usually a problem. What you're going to do, we have a lot of issues with sonic walls, especially because, frankly, a lot of people don't know how to program them. And when we have a scenario where we can't get past the IT people, we suggest using this router bypass, channel all of your voice traffic through this secondary route, and see if your problems go away. This, usually that will get rid of all of your problems. And if that does for you, what we would suggest then is that you show that to the IT people and advise them that you've been able to prove that the problem exists in the router, and whatever the problem is, you need to figure it out and address it.